Good evening.
Hi, Sandra.
Hello.
I have 6:30 now, so I'm going to start the webinar.
Jeremy, when we do a meeting like this, do you end up doing a role for all of the committees?
Yes, tonight, some people might get called 3 times.
All right, we'll give folks a few minutes. Thank you.
This stop is 86th Street and Fort Hamilton Parkway. Next stop, 86th Street and Fifth Avenue. Transfer available to be 60.
Okay, I'll look to you, Jeremy, if you think we should do roll call.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to mute everybody. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to 3 different committees meeting tonight. We're going to keep this fair. We're going to do it in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with the Health Committee. Committee members, you may be members of more than one committee, which means I'm going to call your name more than once. Please acknowledge your name each time that I call it. So as I said, we're going to start with the Health Committee. Let's start with Cynthia Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you. Pat Ruiz.
Present.
Thank you. Griselle Amador. Joan Body.
Here.
Thank you. Cynthia Felix.
Here.
Thank you. Barbara Lee. Christina Lem. Arelis Martinez. Dr. Carmen Rivera. Julio Pena III.
Present.
Thank you. We will move on to the Sanitation and Environment Committee. Let's start with Joseph Canali, Diana Gonzalez, Amel Afzal, Joan Body.
Yeah.
Thank you. Christina Das, Mary Jo Eister.
Here.
Thank you. Nicole Huang, John Johnston.
Here.
Thank you. Paul Mack, Arelis Martinez, Marilyn Melman, Gabino Morales, Daniel Murphy, Dr. Carmen Rivera, Samuel Sierra. We will move on to the Transportation Committee. Oh, I'm sorry, Julio Pena III. I see you there, Julio. Okay, Transportation Committee, Katie Walsh.
Present.
Thank you. John DeLuper.
Present.
Thank you. Sandra Alfonso.
Present.
Thank you. Joan Body.
Yeah.
That's a hat trick, Joan. 3 committees. Joe Canali. Jerry Chan. David Estrada. Diana Gonzalez. Zachary Jacy. Roberto Martinez.
Present.
Thank you. Marilyn Melman. Gabino Morales. Samuel Sierra. Cindy Vandenbosch.
Present.
Thank you. And I see joining us Diana Gonzalez.
Yep.
And Diana, I assume you're also here for the Sanitation Committee, correct?
Yes, sanitation and environment.
Thank you. Roll has been called.
Okay, thank you so much, and to the other committees for joining. I've had some Wi-Fi connectivity issues, so if my video gets funny, just maybe wave or shake your hand so I know. My name is Katie Walsh, and I'm the chair for transportation. And I'm going to share my screen just so that I can show the agenda for tonight. And hopefully this works okay. Okay. So we have a short presentation we've got a couple of representatives, but we'll be learning about the state of New York's air quality division work that they've been doing on air monitoring. And this is specifically to hear about work that's been happening already for the past 3 months and work that will continue for another 9 months related to air quality monitoring, again, in our district. And that has so much to do with health, with traffic, with transportation. So we're really happy to have our guests tonight. And then our second presentation is going to be learning about a community-led initiative project that's been happening in Red Hook, specifically about both air quality sensors as well as some traffic and noise sensors. And so we have some presenters again to share the perspective from Red Hook and what the opportunity could be to bring some of this work into our district. I want to, before we kick off, I want to just make sure that everybody who is here knows about a very important workshop that we want to make sure that Community Board 7, our neighbors, community members show up to the best of your ability, right, to get there in person next week. There will be a virtual session on March 30th, but this is the New York City Department of Transportation is hosting a session about the BQE, about the corridor, the Gowanus Expressway, Tuesday, March 21st at 6:30 at PS 24, which is at 427 38th Street. It's in the cafeteria. The community board is going to be sending out flyers in multiple languages. They have already, and they will again share those out with everyone this week. And please do your best to get there. And again, this virtual session will be on March 30th, but we're doing everything we can to show up on Tuesday and share your perspective about the Gowanus Expressway and 3rd Avenue. There will also be some sessions in April, again about 3rd Avenue, April 18th and April 27th. We will also be getting information out to the community about those two opportunities. That's for the 3rd Avenue study that our community has asked for over 20 plus years around traffic and safety on 3rd Avenue. So first up, March 21st, next week, and then we'll have those two dates in April. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's see, my video is down, but before we turn to our presenters, did the chairs of the other committees that we're hosting with Environment and Sanitation and Health want to add anything else before we turn over?
I'm good.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Am I the chair for the day? If so, I'm good too.
Great. Okay, so fantastic. So we're going to turn to presenters, and Margaret, I think am I passing to you?
I think so. I think Adriana's going to start us off. I'll just try and
Okay.
share my screen.
Great. Thank
Oops.
you.
It says host disabled participant sharing screen. Let me see if I can do it again.
Sorry, I just haven't had the chance to make you co-host yet.
Okay.
And you should be able to share now.
Okay. And like this. How's that?
Great. Oh,
Did it?
yep. Can you push play for the
So I'm trying to.
Okay.
There we go.
success? All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana Espinosa. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Equity and Justice at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, or DEC for short. I am also, I was a longtime CB7 resident until recently, moved a little bit up 4th Avenue, but endless amounts of love for your community. We're here today to talk a little bit about our community air monitoring initiative that has been underway for a few months. We have a lot of information to get through. We're going to try to give you an overview of, how we got here, what we've been doing so far, and a little bit of insight into what we have found from our air monitoring. And so just to kick us off, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, a little bit of background here. This work that we're going to talk about today comes from the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or Climate Act, because that's way too many words. And the Climate Act aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and specifically, there are requirements there to aim to alleviate disproportionate burdens in what's termed disadvantaged communities, or DACs for short, that were identified by the Climate Justice Working Group. This working group includes representatives of community and environmental justice organizations from across the state. There is a member from a community-based organization in CB7 as well, represented on that body. And that working group was established to ensure that the state's Climate Act is also advancing climate justice. Part of a couple provisions from the law, one, at least 35% of clean energy spending and energy efficiency spending by the state of New York must be realized in these disadvantaged communities to help reduce environmental and economic inequities. And so that group's been working over several years to identify those disadvantaged communities across the state. Another initiative or another requirement of the law was that the state must undertake air monitoring in 4 disadvantaged communities. And the governor announced last year that we were expanding that to 10 communities, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And next slide. And with that, I will go just briefly over the purpose of the air monitoring initiative, is to identify local pollution sources that are contributing to high air pollution burdens in disadvantaged communities. So we're looking for high or peak pollutant levels in the data, and we'll also use other information sources like our regulatory monitors, permit reviews, and further investigations to follow up on any areas of concern that we identify through this monitoring. And all the information, data, and community input will be used to help identify the sources of air pollution and reduce air pollution and greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change. And with that, I'll turn it over to Margaret from our air team for more info.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Lafar. I'm the Assistant Director for the Division of Air Resources at DEC, and I'm also leading the group of research scientists that are working on the initiative. So how did we select the areas for monitoring? The Climate Justice Working Group developed draft criteria for identifying disadvantaged communities. And with the working group's input, DEC used a subset of 12 environmental indicators, which are most associated with air pollution, to select the areas for monitoring. The indicators, excuse me, represent possible air pollution burdens from, for example, traffic pollutants like fine particulate matter or PM2.5, and sources such as major oil storage facilities, power plants, and scrap metal processors. After identifying the 10 communities with the highest air pollution burden, DEC held 2 community meetings to gather input on air quality concerns and locations of sensitive populations to help finalize the study boundaries. During these 2 Brooklyn meetings, we heard concerns about air quality around the Bronx-Queens Expressway, especially around the on and off ramps, and air quality in Red Hook because of warehouse operations. So this slide shows the disadvantaged communities, or DACs, with high air pollution burdens selected for monitoring. The map on the left shows the DACs outside of New York City. So we have the Buffalo, Tonawanda, Niagara Falls study area, Rochester, Syracuse, the Capital District, Albany, which the Capital District includes Albany, Waterville, Cohoes, and parts of northern Troy. And then heading downstate, we have Mount Vernon, Yonkers, New Rochelle on Long Island, Hempstead, and nearby areas, including Newcastle, Uniondale, and Roosevelt. And then the map on the right shows the New York City boroughs that have been included in the study, Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. So the pollutants, these are the targeted pollutants and sources that we're trying to capture with this initiative. As many of you know, air pollution is a mixture of gases and particles, or particulate matter, which is also called PM. Some of the pollutants are released directly from sources or form in the atmosphere, like ozone. PM2.5 is a fine inhalable particulate matter that is generally 2.5 microns and smaller in size. A particle this size is so small you can't see it. It's about 30 times smaller than a strand of hair. And PM2.5 comes from sources such as burning petroleum-based fuels that are used to heat buildings, generate electricity, and run motor vehicles and construction equipment. Other sources include industrial processes and commercial cooking. Black carbon, often called soot, is a part of PM2.5. It comes mainly from diesel emissions and wood burning and contributes to climate change. The burning of these fossil fuels also creates gases such as nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. Methane is another potent greenhouse gas that comes from landfills and sewage treatment. Ethane is measured with the methane to identify natural gas leaks. And then finally, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, are chemicals found in paints, adhesives, industrial solvents, and fuels like gasoline. VOCs and gases in motor vehicle exhaust react with sunlight, which produce ozone in the atmosphere. So the monitoring may also be able to detect specific VOCs, such as benzene, toluene, ethylene, benzene, and xylene to help further identify sources. So this will be a year-long study, and this process diagram illustrates the collection and review of the mobile monitoring data. New York State contracted with a company called Aclima to conduct the mobile monitoring. Staff at DEC is reviewing the preliminary data and looking for possible areas of concern and evaluating high pollutant levels or peaks. As Aclima collects more data, we look to see if the peaks are occurring in the same areas. We're investigating what sources may be contributing to these peaks. And periodically, we'll provide updates and gather community input. That's one of the really key parts of this initiative, and the input from the community members is really important. We say in every one of our presentations, you know your community and its concerns best. We're not going to pretend that we know your area better. At the end of a full year of collection, Aclima will validate the preliminary data and then process it to produce the final results. So this is all like working on a puzzle, and we need all the pieces of data and information to create a complete picture to inform pollutant reduction strategies. So with this initiative, we're using a mobile monitoring platform. The contractor's conducting the air monitoring using a hybrid Prius. Sensors are mounted to the vehicle, and they're measuring air quality each second as they drive down the streets. The mobile monitoring allows for the study of a larger area than our fixed monitor stations. It's really good at identifying peak concentrations of air pollution, and it's used to screen for sources of concern. It does not characterize population exposures or determine risk. So the sensors have a fast response, but they're not as accurate as regulatory measurements. And these measurements are collected in the middle of the road. So again, one reason why it's not a measurement of exposure. All right. So, oops. So as I said, right now we're taking a look at the preliminary data. This in Brooklyn, the monitoring started in September, and it's gone. The first quarter of data goes through the end of November, and that's what I'm reporting on now. So these data again are preliminary, and it's the raw data that is collected as the vehicles are driving across the community study area. The measurements need to be collected at different times of the day, different days of the week, and different seasons of the year. But they are defined as preliminary because they have not been processed and verified. That'll happen at the end of the study. And I think, so as an example, we're going to show you the map from fine particulate matter in just a second. So first up is the study boundaries. These are the final study boundaries. All the road segments in blue are the roads that the Aclima vehicles are driving on. And we'll go on to the next one. So To keep track of the data collection in progress, this map shows the number of passes for each segment over the first quarter of data collection. Our goal for 1 quarter is to get 5 passes to meet the overall requirement of 20 passes for each segment for the year. So we're doing a pretty good job. Most of the study area is 4 or more. And then this was the preliminary PM 2.5 data for the study area. This is with its initial calibration. An average is obtained for the 1 second data collected in each pass through a road segment, and then the median of the passes for each segment is shown on the map. Percentiles put the data in order from low to high. The segments are shown with a color indicating the percentiles across the study area. And if you, I don't know if you can see my cursor, so the percentiles are shown over here in the left bottom corner. Percentiles are a way to see how one road segment or neighborhood compares to another. And a percentile of 50 or the median is the value in the middle. So half the values were below 3.3 micrograms per cubic meter. 80% of the values were below 4.4 micrograms per cubic meter. And again, these data will change as more data are collected, just because there will be a bigger data set for one, but by the end of this, the study, the data will be verified and calibrated. So this histogram on the bottom left shows the frequency or the count of the number of road segments with the same measurement. It shows whether the concentrations in the study area, sorry, let me go back, in the study area are similar or vary. And I really like to look at this, you know, you think of your bell curve. So most of the values are in a very small range, but there's a few outliers on the end. And that's really what we're taking a close look at DEC. So next steps, data processing. You know, because it's impractical to drive every road every day over a year, ACLMA uses models and DEC's air monitoring network to fill in the times when the cars were not driving and collecting data. But in the meantime, we are looking at that raw 1 second, those raw 1 second measurements. And we're using that to identify areas with elevated and repeated peak concentrations. And the team's reviewing that data to determine if follow-up is necessary. And we'll report on some of our initial findings in each of the quarterly report out meetings. And then after 12 full months of data collection, ACLMA is going to create an annual concentration estimate map. And that will be publicly accessible. And we'll have final estimated concentrations for each 100-meter road segment for each pollutant. And I think it's back to you. There you go.
Thanks, Margaret. Okay, so just to close it out, so we can hopefully get to questions. So as it was mentioned earlier, DEC is planning to provide updates on each quarter of data to the community. We held one previously. We have all of our meetings posted online. We share the recordings, and so we can put a link in the chat so that you can go back and look at other previous meetings. But in order to promote robust participation and partnership, we have created a community advisory committee in each of the areas where this study is happening. And I wanted to just go a little bit over, that committee here. So our goal with the committee was to establish early partnerships with stakeholders before we get to the mitigation phase, to provide shared access to information and encourage, even encourage community members to, if there's interest, meet independently of state involvement to develop their own priorities for solutions or mitigation strategies to propose to the state based on the findings of the study. So just to reiterate, the Community Advisory Committee will generally serve three purposes: sharing insights from the monitoring and general awareness about the program. Two is attuning the study to community knowledge on an ongoing basis. And what I mean by that is providing avenues for folks to, share their institutional knowledge, about, usually I hear construction that there's new construction on this block, or they just demolished a building over here, or I usually hear the trucks around 2 a.m. All of those types of really pieces of information are incredibly valuable, and it can help us attune the study over time. And then the final purpose of the committee, as I mentioned earlier, is respecting community-driven solutions during the mitigation phase of the program. We want to make sure that we create an equitable space so that it's not just New York State setting the menu of options on how to address solutions that may be to issues that may be uncovered in your own communities. So any interested stakeholder can participate in the Community Advisory Committee. We are partnering with BP Reynoso as a co-convener of this committee. We thought it was really important to have a local leader involved in the effort. And so, I'd love to hear from folks tuning in today, if there's any interest in being involved in the committee. I believe the BP's office should have reached out to every community board already that's in the study area. But if not, and you want to get plugged into sort of that ongoing engagement work, I'm happy to plug you in. And with that, I think we can move to the next slide. Or maybe that was the last one. Nope, here we go. Happy to take some questions now to get your feedback. There's lots of contact info here on this slide. But if you the first email address there is really your best the best bet for getting information about the air monitoring initiative. But regardless of who you contact at DEC, you'll definitely get routed to the right person.
Thank you so much to both for presenting. Is this the first meeting that you've come to a community board to speak at?
No. So we spoke at the Brooklyn Borough Cabinets that had representatives from all the community boards back, I think, last year. We did the same for the Queens. We did a Queensborough board, and I think maybe some one-off community board meetings as well, as requested.
Great. Thanks for that. And the community board borough meeting, I think my understanding is it might include a district manager, or it includes a chair. I don't know, Julia or Jeremy can correct the record, but it's kind of an aggregation of community board.
I believe it's the chair or the chair's representative.
Got it. Okay. So thanks for that. I'll ask one question and then turn it to board members who have questions. They can raise their hand. Then we'll take some questions from the public, and then just also keep in mind that we will have another presentation from the community efforts in Red Hook, and so we'll need to turn to that as well. I'm just going to ask you if it means turning back slides, just to tell us it's 3 months in, but can you just tell us a little bit more about, to the best of your ability with 3 months in, what you're seeing with some of those shades? Like, what does it mean in terms of the PM 2.5? So Margaret, it's before the data has been processed, but just to kind of explain it a little bit more to folks who are less familiar with this kind of work.
Sure. So at this point, we are, for the most part, the values that we're seeing are lower than what we're seeing at our regulatory monitors. That's in general. I would say that part of that is due to it hasn't been gone through its final calibration, so numbers may increase at the end of the year just for that reason. We have taken a close look at some areas where we're seeing repeated hits, and there are some areas where that second data is higher. But what we're seeing for the most part are areas, and I'm trying to think here what we saw. Mhm.
We're seeing the question
Yeah.
slide, so I don't know if you want to turn to
Okay,
that
I'm trying
slide.
to, no, so I'm looking, all right, I can move up to, well, I think I can. So, sometimes what you see, and let me move that over. Some areas, certainly near some of the main areas of traffic are going to show up in PM 2.5. I do have some slides of some of the other pollutants, I think at the end of the slide deck, but no real patterns emerging and nothing that would be of great concern to us at this point. There are a few areas that we are following up on, and they're found, what we're finding is they're in industrial areas. So could be a combination of dust. It's hard to, at this point, pinpoint exactly one source. Where we're seeing the higher elevations, it's in areas where there could be several sources that are the cause of it. So it could be those several sources in combination, or one or two of them that are really causing the higher values.
Jeremy, maybe you can help with the facilitation of calling on board members.
Sure, I'm happy
Thanks.
to. I have Pat Ruiz.
Hi, my question, you referred to the local community group, and I just wanted to know, is that Uprose?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I have John DeLuper next.
Hi. So one of the things that I noticed in the presentation was you talked about how this monitoring is being done by vehicles, the Prius is driving around, but you also said you have regulatory monitors that already exist in the community. Is there a list of those publicly available? And I take it those are stationary things. Is that right?
Yeah, so our regulatory monitoring network, they're all stationary. I'm not sure I have a map of the nearby monitors right handy, but it is something I could follow up on. Let me just take a look at the slide deck quick. No, I don't. Sorry. Sometimes when we have these slides, we do throw in a slide where our regulatory monitors are. If you go to our DEC website, we have all our monitors listed on our webpage. I can get you the link, and we actually have our data. Some data is available in real time. Some of the data has to go back to the lab to be processed before it's available, but any data that is recording in real time is available online.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I have Diana Gonzalez next.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say thank you for coming here. Usually when we're dealing with state agencies, they don't want to have anything to do with community boards or communicating with community boards. And this is a really refreshing change of pace that I hope other state agencies can learn from your example. So thank you.
Oh, good.
If you ever want to tell your friends over at DOT that we don't bite, please send them our way. So a few questions on this. One of the things that so actually, first of all, when exactly is this study going to be completed? When is the 12 months up and the data will be calibrated and finalized and released?
Sure. So Brooklyn, the study started in September. So at the end of August, the data collection phase will be done. It'll probably take a few months for the final report to come out. And that final report is not what, the contractor puts together a website so that it's interactive and you can look at all the data yourself. You can zoom in on areas. There'll be some information about about the different pollutants on there. And so that will be done by the end of the year. And during that time, we'll be working with the community advisory committee to develop the strategies for emissions reduction or mitigation, and DEC will put together a final report with those recommendations, and that will be done. That final report will be done by, I think, June of 2024. But you really using the data that we collect here along with our other data sources to help inform those decisions.
Okay, and then in terms of the mitigation, the purpose of this is to just create a plan for the mitigation, or is there any like funding available to actually implement mitigation measures or regulatory power to say, shut down a peaker power plant or something like that? Is there teeth behind this, or is it just recommendations?
So there is teeth behind it. There are some solutions that will take longer than others. Shutting down a peaker plant is not an easy task. I'm not going to promise doing that. If it's a recommendation, there's a lot to it, and the work afterwards to make sure we follow through on those strategies is not going to be DEC alone. Things like shutting down peaker plants or mitigating the emissions from a roadway. It takes more than one agency. And so there will be a lot of follow-up, and, we are committed to making those happen. So
Yeah. If I could just add,
absolutely.
if I can add on to that, just to say that, the part of the teeth here comes from the language of the Climate Act itself, which requires DEC and other agencies to prioritize co-pollutant and greenhouse gas emissions reduction in disadvantaged communities. And the work of this initiative specifically is going to provide the state with the best knowledge base available on what are the communities that have the highest air pollution burden, where specifically are they most prominent, and it can also help provide solutions, through the community input and mitigation phase that we're talking about. And so the state's entire portfolio for climate investments, it varies program by program and agency by agency. But for example, we have the Environmental Bond Act, that is $4.2 billion that passed thanks to the voters this past November, that DEC will be implementing. And part of that is a requirement for 35 to 40% of that money to be spent in disadvantaged communities. And so the state will have, again, this data as a resource to make decisions about what projects and where we spend that money. And so hopefully that helps to answer your question.
Okay, and then my last question was a little more technical. I'm noticing on the various maps, you had the one of the routes and then another of the one where you found data, and that one looked a little like smaller. Why is that? Are those kind of border areas not getting as much driving?
All right, so here's the boundary, and then this is, so it's the same. It's just
it just changed color. Okay.
And I removed the outer boundary is removed. So so it's every street within the boundary, and some of our boundaries were actually like outside, like areas where there are roads. So the boundary may have looked larger.
And then so the colors here denote the number of times it's been driven. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see you're having a little trouble getting access to the waterfront over there.
Right. Right. So if it's not a publicly accessible road, that's not going to be something that the cars can drive on.
So the sensor can't be detached from the car and carried around. The car has to get in.
Yeah, the way that the contractor does this work, it's got to be attached to the car. They can't, unhook it and bring it with them. It really has to stay attached to the car. It's kind of a permanent attachment. So
Sure. And then to follow up on John's earlier question about the regulatory sensors, where would we go to find more information about those?
I'll look it up right after this, and I'll put the link in the chat if that works for you.
Sounds great. Those are all of my questions. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Sure.
Okay, Cynthia Gonzalez is next.
Yes, I also want to thank you for coming to do this presentation, which is very important to our community. My questions go back to some things that both John and Diana spoke about. The first thing that I heard you say, one of the first things, and this is Margaret, that it's a mobile monitoring, but when you stated that, you said that the results of the mobile monitoring are not as accurate as the stationary. So what is the purpose of doing it that way if it's less reliable than the stationary?
So one of the benefits of using sensor technology is that we can deploy many of them, where the regulatory monitors need to be stationary. It takes a lot of maintenance. We have staff, there's a lot more requirements with regulatory monitors. Sensor data is used for a lot of studies, and it's used as a screen. We can't use it to compare directly to the standards. It's not something that EPA would accept as a, sensor data is not the only data that they would use to determine whether or not an area is in attainment of a standard. But it certainly can help us, especially when we use it this way. One of the outcomes might be we can't determine exactly what source is causing a higher area of pollution, but it can help us identify where we should put some stationary monitors. And for a study this with this wide geographical range, it's just not possible to get that many regulatory monitors there. And we really wanted to get that very fine geographical representation across each study area, definitely, but also across the state. So we also have, if you go to our website, and I'll bring it back to our contact page. So if you go to this website here, the www.dec.ny.gov/chemical/125320.html. That website has some fact sheets down at the bottom. We also have links to all of our previous meetings, study area, detailed maps of each of the study areas for all 10 study areas. So there's a lot of information that we're trying to make sure gets out there online. But we do have a fact sheet specific to sensor technology. So if you have further questions, more detailed questions, we can certainly follow up with you as well.
I put a link to that website in the chat too.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. And the second part of my question is, what are some other mitigation strategies that can be proposed other than the one that you mentioned about closing down some
Mhm.
kind of power plant or something? I don't know.
Sure. So, control strategies could be things like DEC initiating some regulations to reduce or require additional controls on certain facilities.
But I was asking, like, what does that specifically mean?
s- We have, well, for one, we have to find out what the study tells us. I don't want to suggest strategies that might not be relevant here, but there we could have it could be that we're finding it's a type of source that is not a regulated source right now. Maybe there are some kind of I don't even know, like something that is more infrequent. It could be trains or just dust that is getting entrained and causing problems, or truck traffic, things.
Or major e-commerce last mile
Right.
trucking facilities that
Right,
are
trucking
proliferating in our
facilities.
district that are not regulated currently.
Right.
Yeah.
So it could be like something for that trucking industry. Maybe it takes a local ordinance, and it's not DEC necessarily creating a regulation, but it takes DEC working with the local municipalities to come up with a solution. Mitigation could also be, we know we have some regulations that are going to help solve some of these problems, because we're going to electrify the fleets eventually, and we know motor vehicle emissions are going down, but in the meantime, maybe we target some air filtration systems in public housing or schools, or it may be that we target electrification of municipal buses or school buses. So I think there are strategies that are going to be shorter term strategies and could work, and others that might take a little bit more time. And we want to hear from the communities about what's going to work for all of you.
Thank you.
Members of the public, we invite you to raise your hands at this time. Be happy to call on you.
While we're waiting for that, I just also wanted to add that we do have another local partner in CB7. Part of this work, the Office of Environmental Justice provided grants to community-based organizations to sort of build capacity around air monitoring. And our grantee in your community was Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And so they're also involved, and part of their grant award will have access to this data.
I think we have Sabine on. I don't want to put her on the spot from Neighbors Helping Neighbors, Fifth Avenue Committee, but if she wanted to share anything else, she could put her hand up so we know. But other than that, Jeremy, I think you have a hand up.
Yep, a couple of them. Sabine, Sabine, you can unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself as well. I've been engaging recently with a lot of folks from Community Board 7, in particular in regards to the BQE and the BQE South and the visioning process happening there. And I've also been part of the borough president's convenings and these DEC meetings as well. So I work at Fifth Avenue Committee and Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And so we intersect with both Gowanus, Red Hook, and Sunset Park communities. So across the two community board districts 6 and 7. And yes, we are a grantee on the climate justice and air quality capacity building project. And so we intend to roll out some community education workshops that will also be using some of the Acclima data that Margaret and Adriana were talking about. And we're going to be working to try to also build community capacity and community-driven solutions to share with the DEC. So happy to share, to keep in touch with the community board, to provide updates and to invite members of the community to join us through the workshops that we'll be hosting as well.
Great. Nice to meet you virtually. We'll be talking, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you. I have Maria Roca next. Maria, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Very pleased to be here and become aware of the interest that the state. Now, my question is, over the years, we have heard, well, I have heard, let me be specific, about different agencies monitoring air quality. Some might have been municipal. However, I have not heard reporting of this information. So it's very gratified by hearing that there will be a report by a private, by an outside, what do you call it, contractor, and there will be a website, an interactive website. Are there other interactive websites to the knowledge of not only the representatives of the DEC here, but anyone on the panel from the city? And also, where will there be a collaboration, an active collaboration between DEC on behalf of the state and the environmental folks here in the city, Department of Health here in the city, and at the federal level, so that all three levels of government are aware of what the other two are doing? And if different levels are gathering data, how does that data compare to each other? Because the public wants to know that information. And it doesn't seem that over the years, that collaboration, that intersectionality has taken place, even though our taxes go to everybody, to all three levels. So that's my question.
Sure. So I will say that we do work with City DOH and EPA on different projects. All of our data at DEC is available online. And again, I'll get you that website once I can go search for it. I don't have it right handy for you.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about
yeah.
that, because I am assuming everything is going to be on the chat. And am I assuming correctly that the chat is going to be made available so that people don't have to go writing links down? And we can, okay, thank you.
And you can always follow up if you send a note into the email address listed on this slide. If you follow up, we'll respond to you as well. I will say, some of what we see at DEC does track really well with some of the data that City DOH has done. They've been doing for several years it's called NICAS is the study, and looking at several different pollutants across every borough, not quite at this level of refinement, but higher spatial refinement than what our regulatory monitors can do. And again, they're using sensors, but that study that they've done is, I would say, a really great study to look at, and to look at that data. That is all online as well. And I don't know that EPA has any of their own monitors in the state. None that I can think of off the top of my head. What EPA does for us is fund many of our much of our work, and they help set the guidelines for how we need to do certain monitoring.
I
Okay,
can just add on to that, Maria, to answer your question. So this is something we've heard a lot from many community members, that they want to see better coordination across different levels of government. And we've done our best to try to loop in everyone that we think makes sense. We've got a lot of requests for us to make sure city DOT knows about this for their BQE planning, for example, that the MTA knows about this for their congestion pricing planning. And so this is definitely a need that we've heard repeatedly from community members. And we've been making those introductions and making sure that folks know that DEC is doing this. For the city in particular, the Department of Health has been following along, and we've invited them to, join our community meetings, and I think they have in the past, and they're open to the public, and that means government officials as well. And so we're trying to make sure that we're creating as much synergy as possible. And I'll just close by saying that's another reason why I thought it was really important to create this community advisory committee that has a co-convener. So it's not just DEC. So the fact that we're partnering with BP Reynoso, where we can work with each other to make sure that we're looping in the right partners. And the borough president may have a different set of leverage points to bring partners to the table that a state agency would. And so, together, a partnership between a city official and state official, I think, can help hopefully create the kind of collaboration that you are asking for, Maria.
yes, thank you. I have one more quick question to any one of the presenters. I see that the map where the vehicle is moving, and I'm with you through my phone, so that I cannot expand the map. So forgive me if I have the wrong view. It's very close to the BQE, as it should be. And there are a lot of number of schools that are right under the BQE. 3 come to mind. There might be, I think 3, but there are also some schools on 4th Avenue. That's a very important, very area of concern for a lot of people in Sunset Park. The proximity of all this toxicity to our children and to our elders, the most vulnerable to. But will there be some, as a point of a comparison, some tracking or some monitoring that in areas that are further away from 3rd Avenue other than the truck routes? Because as the wind blows into Sunset Park, for example, you're going uphill, and that has an effect on how fast or how high, for example, small particle, the what commonly known soot, travels up that hill. So will there be some kind of point of comparison to see? It is happening near the BQE, where we know there's a lot of things going on, and where there may be industrial uses, but will there be checkpoints further up the avenues to see, does it go all the way? Does it stop where close to the BQE?
So I'm going to have to.
I can tell our own map probably better than you. It does
Probably.
include 4th and 5th Avenues.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
I have last question before the next presentation. I have Damian Andrade. Damian, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I think you went over that if people were like wanting to like get together and submit ideas, can the public, like individual as a person, submit their own ideas?
Sure.
Oh, okay, perfect. And it's through the email that you provided on your slides, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. You mentioned that like you didn't have so much data regarding like the PM what it's called with the PM in the neighborhood. Do you know like what points in Sunset Park specifically has, I guess, higher than other parts?
So I can take that one since as the Brooklynite here. So
Thank you.
this map that's open right now on the slide shows our first quarter preliminary results for PM 2.5, which is particle air pollution. So if I don't know if we can zoom in here, but in Sunset Park, it looks to be like 4th Avenue is a little bit higher than the rest of the neighborhood. You know, certainly above Greenwood Cemetery, it looks like the BQE there, and going into the Prospect Expressway looks a little bit higher than the rest of the neighborhood. And just going east to west, if I can try to, so that would be, I would guess somewhere between 39th to 36th Street in Brooklyn, going east to west. Also look to be a little bit higher than other areas, but I would just couch that with like, this is our first 3 months of data. This is all going to change as we collect more and more data every single day. That we'll get a better sense of like what this actually means for sources of air pollution. But those are some of the earlier patterns that we're seeing right now. And you can see on the sort of bar graph here that you know, I say they're higher than other parts of the neighborhood, but if you can see overall for all of the data that we've collected so far, it's towards the left side of the scale, so it's not really nothing sort of alarming, sort of huge jump out at you, call your neighbors type thing yet, but we will call you as we learn more and make sure that we keep everyone in the loop.
Okay, perfect. I guess one more question. What day specifically would you start kind of doing like community outreach to like ask I guess all the other members of the community in a way, like a participating event?
Sure. So every few months we're convening a public meeting, which you and any other member of the public are able to attend, and we'll present basically updates to these maps. We'll present an update of the latest information we have to share, and then we'll have a Q&A just like this after the meeting, and folks can chime in with ideas or thoughts. They can ask us to zoom in on a particular block or part of the map, and we're happy to do that. And so through those public meetings, I think we're in the process of planning the next one in Brooklyn now. I don't know for sure if we have a date set. But do you know?
I think
Margaret?
it's going to be in May.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't scheduled any of the next 6 yet.
So those public meetings are really the best way to plug in. If you want to, you know, go a little bit beyond just those meetings every few months and sort of work with the BP's office to develop, you know, Brooklyn priorities for mitigation strategies, I'm happy to plug you into the work that we're doing with the Community Advisory Committee, so that group will be working sort of in parallel to develop, again, their own priorities or solutions or questions that they want this program to answer.
Great. That's fantastic. And I want to thank you both for coming. Hope you can stay for this next part of the presentation, which is exactly on a community air monitoring traffic sensor project that's been going on in Red Hook that we want to be able to learn from. So thank you, and would ask everyone to please stay on, because we now let's see if I think Maddie, if you are on, and you might have a presentation, can put your video on. Okay, we'll turn to you to introduce yourself in the presentation.
I will put on the presentation, Maddie, and let you begin.
So you can hear.
Maddie, we can't hear you very well at all.
Okay. Yeah,
could I
you can't
ask,
hear me. Okay, no
there we
problem.
go. Could I ask for permission to share my screen for this portion?
You should be able
Thank
to
you.
now.
Excellent. Here we go.
Hello, hello. No. Can you hear me?
You're kind of breaking up. Can you maybe turn off your video so that the sound comes through better?
Yeah. Is that better?
We can understand you now.
No.
I would invite everybody to turn on the closed captions as well. They do seem to be capturing what he's saying.
Is that, can you hear me there? Hello, hello?
It's a bit better.
No? I'm gonna try to call in. Okay.
It
I can
is better
try
now.
to call
It
in.
is a little better now.
No,
No,
this is good.
You sound good now.
Well, this is a great excuse to speak slower. Hi, everyone. I hope I get to see your, is that evening?
Yeah, I can, while Maddie's maybe trying to call in, I can jump in with a little bit of background. My name's Kaveh. I'm an investigative journalist at Consumer Reports. I'm coming to you from San Francisco. I've been working with Maddie on this project in Red Hook for some time, for over a year now. And I can tell you a little bit about how we got here, for starters. In 2021, I worked on an investigation with The Guardian that looked into Amazon's warehouses across the entire country. We got a database of their warehouse locations nationwide. And we took a look at the neighborhoods that these warehouses were being built in. What we found is that more than 2/3 of these facilities were in neighborhoods with a greater share of people of color than average for the cities that they were serving. And we found that more than half, about 57% of the facilities were in neighborhoods with more low-income residents than average for the neighborhoods that they were serving. And so this was a pretty lopsided pattern. What you can see in this sort of odd graphic on the left here is just how far off the median each one of these facilities was. And so the further it is to the right there, the more the gap between the proportion of people of color in the neighborhood with the Amazon warehouse compared to average. What we also found, again, nationwide, is that many of these facilities sort of popped up without community engagement, often without even warning. You know, we heard from neighbors in the Inland Empire outside of LA. We heard from folks in Chicagoland who sort of woke up one day, looked up, and there was the blue Amazon smile on a big building that they'd been waiting to see what it was, and that was sort of the first they realized what was coming in. Now, I'm probably describing things that are very familiar. What stuck out to me is that this was a pattern around the country. So if this is something that sort of sounds maybe like an experience that you're having in your neighborhoods, you're not alone. What we wanted to do was explore some of the impacts. What does it mean for a warehouse community that a warehouse or a facility, a last mile facility, arrives in the backyard? So we wanted to look at things like air quality, traffic safety, and what we found, and this tags really closely into the previous presentation, is that there was a pretty yawning gap in hyperlocal air quality data. It was really hard to be able to tell, especially over a large area how air quality was being affected by truck traffic. After we published this, I heard from neighbors all around the country who live near warehouses being like, yeah, this sounds familiar. This sounds like what I'm seeing. We heard from some folks in Red Hook, and that's sort of how this collaboration began. And so the work there is to fill some data gaps that create a bit of an imbalance where a company that's developing a facility may know a whole lot about traffic patterns or expected trip generation in a new neighborhood, but people who live near the warehouse may not have access to that information. I just want to acknowledge before we go forward that we're not anywhere close to the only ones doing this, and Red Hook, the Red Hook Initiative and Pioneer Works has been doing this longer than we have in Sunset Park, Uprose, El Puente, and or elsewhere in Brooklyn. As part of New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, there's been a lot of air quality monitoring, some of which is sort of looking specifically at truck and van traffic related to warehouses as well. Just to note on that air quality monitoring is really additive. As more groups put up more sensors, it sort of expands the network and allows for more visibility into what's happening on the ground. And plus, we're looking at some other sorts of data as well. Maddie, I don't know if you're on the line yet. If so,
I am.
I'll pass this to
So
you.
you can hear me.
Great.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. So thanks, Ave, and thanks for taking on the intro. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this experiment that we embarked on about a year ago, as Kyle was describing, looking at different opportunities to capture really changes over time, over a long period of time. Being able to do that was from the original vision, what we were aspiring to, and also capture over time data around these environmental factors across 4 different indicators. Air quality, traffic, noise, and vibration are something that would come up repeatedly as I would hear about different communities experiencing issues related to the challenges that were being described. And just a tiny bit of background for myself. I'm an industrial software and technology around the space of climate change, making cities more friendly to humans and to the environment. So as I saw this, it really looked like an interesting technology problem that I was hoping to offer some tools and methods on, right? And so across these 4 indicators, from where we began to where we are now, we are really prioritizing within traffic, trucks specifically for their huge impact. And in terms of informing neighbors, we're really prioritizing air quality as it is such an sobresaliente, if there's anyone that speaks Spanish out there, something that stands out
salient
in terms of what people wanna know. And the way we're approaching this and collecting this information, the intent of coming and contributing something to this conversation from a science-based perspective, it's really Consumer Reports has been doing for a long time, so they're an excellent partner to participating on this with us. And finally, an element that that's already part of the system that we're sharing is this aspect of privacy by design in the sensors. And of course, this would be a whole conversation, interesting conversation, I think, in itself about technologies in the city and public space. But suffice it to say that we believe that this information that is very important for neighbors shouldn't come at the cost of privacy concerns. And that's really core to how we made decisions on hardware. So a couple of things that are coming up next are being able to share this information with neighbors, with the public, with our community here in Red Hook, we're working on that part of the software, as well as being able to present this information in public space. Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's about the air we breathe as we walk through the streets. And if we can offer one way to not have to pull out your phone from your pocket, I think we should do it. Next, moving on to the sensors in themselves. I'm sure that you guys are familiar with Purple Air. This is kind of really popular over the last few years. It's become really popular as a way to do community-based air quality monitoring, even if it's just for yourself in your blog, but also sharing that information more broadly. This, in another opportunity, I would be happy to get more into the details of it, but suffice it to say that it's a low-cost air quality sensor that reports live to a map in purpleair.com/map. In fact, you can see the information from the sensors since they've been installed up there. Moving on to the right, we have the Numina traffic sensor, which really has been a pioneer in the space of I don't want to call it smart cities, but in the space of using technology to understand public space and doing that with a privacy by design centered way. And then below you have the other two sensors that we're using for noise and vibration. These are manufactured as well by a small company here in North America, in this case in Canada. The noise monitor or Sentry, like Convergence Intelligence calls them, these measures decibels. So this is yet another aspect of how we can be collecting this information without collecting privately, private information from neighbors, as we present ways to monitor and communicate this information. And finally, vibration all the way to the right and the bottom, along with a solar panel that powers it. This has been one of the most fascinating aspects of watching this technology come together and this data come together as well. And speaking of data, just to offer an example of what it looks like as it comes in, we have the air quality on the left at the top. The air quality indicator is a number that is reported under a framework from the EPA, which is really well documented, and that we've been able to, in our own end, process the data and report it. What you're seeing here is how it comes out in Purple Air Map. On the right, you have what we're doing in terms of counting traffic, focusing on cars. That's a daily graph of truck counts. On the bottom to the left, you have the data coming on decibels, on noise, pollution. By the way, interesting differentiation between a sound and a noise is that a noise is an undesirable sound. Here what we have is the decibel data collection, and then on the right, what you have is how the data we're collecting in terms of vibration looks like. This is called peak particle velocity, and basically what it measures is how much a building shakes. Here in Red Hook, there's many old buildings with different types of foundations that are susceptible to vibration. With some of the bigger trucks, you can see art shake in the walls. This is not interactive art, although one might consider that it could be, given that we're in Red Hook. But in this case, we're talking about literally how buildings shake. Which, until we've been doing this, it's been hard to. It's easy to perceive, but it's been hard to communicate and account for. And so where we are now, and I'm going to go through this one really quickly and turn it back to Cabe. At the moment, we have 3 sensor stations in Red Hook that in total amount to 8 sensors across the different types of sensors that I was mentioning. We've created a data pipeline to receive the data from the different sensors and normalize it and report it for data analysis, and eventually the map application that we're working on, which has the goal of communicating this information to a non-technical audience, to neighbors, to folks that maybe don't even know that an air quality indicator exists. So this is really, an important part of the project, that's sort of like science communication part of the project that we're with our partners and learning as we develop the project how to best provide it, how to best communicate this information. And we know that at least we want to communicate it online, as well as creating some sort of device that allows a more physical, in-person, on-the-ground interaction with this information, with this technology. And finally, just to share, I think something was mentioned, but we're looking at what other opportunities or applications, locations this technology might be useful for, to continue on the learning process, learning and creative process that we're in. We're also very interested and excited to work with other folks in the space that, as was mentioned earlier on, not all of the technologies are compatible necessarily in terms of analysis, but in the case particular of Purple Air, for example, this really is an additive network of air quality data collection. And we're also, of course, interested in other opportunities to share this information as the public science project that it is, public space, public science, public technology. Cabe, back to you.
Ever so briefly, a couple notes of the kinds of outcomes from this kind of data monitoring. Some really interesting things that I think we can learn from these sensors. Most basically, just in this moment, what does air quality look like? How is truck traffic at this moment? These are things that we're able to do sort of piecemeal right now, but we should be able to do also with more of a look back quite soon, so that people can see patterns and trends. You can see what an average weekday looks like. When does truck traffic spike, say, in the morning? What do evenings look like? Are things quiet overnight? When's rush hour? Does it move it around? And then I'm also really interested in questions like, during shopping season and November and December, do you really see a difference in truck volumes then? Beyond averages, peaks are important too. Like at the most bottlenecked, how many trucks are driving down these, in Red Hook, it's often narrow 2-lane streets with cars parked on both sides. Just how much of a bottleneck are we looking at? What do peaks in noise and vibration look like? There's noise levels that even if they just peak there for a minute or two, they can really cause damage. A little bit further down the road, trying to relate some of these variables to one another. What can we say about how much sound or vibration an individual truck or a fleet of trucks during the rush hour, how those affect sound and vibration? And finally, if we gather data for long enough, and we have been gathering data for many months, at different points in Red Hook, we might be able to say something about what happens if a new facility, a new last mile delivery facility opens or closes. If you have a baseline and you see how things change after a new facility starts operating, then that's something important that's hard to get otherwise. So as we're trying to draw patterns out of the data, our partners at the Red Hook Art Project, or RAP, are starting to hold workshops with community members. They're working to map community priorities and sort of prepare to engage with this data as we're getting it cleaned up. The ultimate goal is to develop a plan for neighborhood advocacy, sort of fueled and empowered by this data. And meanwhile, I'm working toward a journalistic article that I hope to publish before the summer with all of this information. That's everything from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to Jeremy for helping us facilitate with questions. If you're a board member, if you can put your hand up, and then we'll go to the public as well. Hopefully my Wi-Fi is not unstable, but I just wanted to thank Kaveh and Maddie for sharing some of this community work that they've been doing on community air quality, kind of demonstrating what is possible. And then as you left it, you are looking for other communities to continue this work in. So I think it's a good time and moment to come to Sunset Park. So Jeremy, with your help, if board members have questions, they can put their hand
I'll
up.
be happy to call on raised hands. Board members, please use the raise hand function. I'll be happy to call on you in order. And then after the board members, we will get to members of the public. I have Diana Gonzalez first.
Hi guys. So this is pretty interesting stuff that you're doing. And so I guess my question for you is sort of, what does it entail, and how many people do you need involved in order to bring this to a new neighborhood?
So, Kaveh, I can take the question.
Please.
So, yeah, you had two parts in your question. The first one was, what does it entail to take it to a new neighborhood, and how many people? Was that the two parts?
For starters, yeah.
So what it entails to bring it to a new neighborhood, there's a couple of parts to it. I would say at least three parts. There's the actual provision of the sensors there and their installation. Here in Red Hook, the different building owners install the sensors that were provided by Consumer Reports. Once the sensors are installed, fortunately, you guys wouldn't have to wait for months until me and my team are developing the software to integrate them to our platform. So basically, that part would already be done. The moment you're adding sensors, we can receive the data. And so there's that element that the process of integration is going to be a lot easier than what we did in Red Hook. And then in terms of data reporting and making use of this is a journey that neighbors in the community would walk along with us, because as we are doing this for the first time in Red Hook, and I would say, you know, in many ways there's some futuristic or speculative aspects of this technology, but at the same time, it's very simple. And I think that that's what's attractive and interesting about it. Yeah, there's, you know, the third element of what you guys will do with this data. And that's a little, I would say, beyond my participation on this. I think I want to help build me and, you know, other people participating on this are trying to help build a thermometer, and it's very core to the vision of the work that we're doing, that this is information that really needs to be stored by the people that are affected and informed by it. So just to be able to have access to this information, what's possible after that is, as I was mentioning, a process of discovery that I think Consumer Reports might have a role in supporting and exploring that. What I can say on my end is that for us, it's actually quite easy to provide some of the elements that are already reusable. However, designing and implementing this process would be the sort of like the initial steps of figuring out where they get installed, what locations are available, etc. So basically, starting with a bit of a study, continuing with you guys receiving the community that implements it, receiving the hardware, and then connecting it to our software. What can be done after that, I will leave to the imaginations of the people that walk the streets that would be informed by the technology.
Okay, and then as a follow-up, have you guys considered partnering with schools to do this air quality monitoring? I ask because, you know, this community board district has two neighborhoods that don't have a lot in common, Windsor Terrace and Sunset Park. But what we do have in common is big highways with lots of schools near them. And that seems like a potential opportunity that would really be good for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great question. Friends and colleagues here in Red Hook have mentioned the interest of doing something with schools. I personally consider schools the capital of a town, and you know, one of the most important places. Certainly one where we want to make sure that as high health standards are applicable. So we have considered it. We haven't taken action on it, but we'd love to hear your ideas about it if you have some.
Yeah. All right. Thank you,
I will
guys.
say one thing we learned in this process is having like a willing partner that's willing to actually go up and drill into the masonry and put a sensor up on some privately held surface is important and also difficult for obvious reasons. Not everyone wants to be climbing around roofs or, you know, messing, or, you know, maybe someone's a renter and doesn't have permission to do things like that. We talked to one school in Red Hook, the Basis School on Columbia Street, and got quite far. And then there were, you know, just some permission issues, and you know, they have a headquarters in Arizona that they answer to as well. And so there was interest, and we weren't able to do it in the first round. But the hope was to work with the school and with students at the school to actually interpret some of the data as well.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Any other board members? Members of the public, we invite you to raise your hand at this time. We'll be happy to call on you in the order in which you raise your hands. I have Maria Roca first. Maria?
Okay, staying with the idea of the collaboration with schools. And I'm hoping that somebody from the DEC, one of the presenters, might still be on the call and listening. Has there been, you mentioned about the physicality of placing a monitor on a school building, but my question is more about having the students, let's say in middle school and high school, whether it is a private school, a community school, or a charter school, actually working with the data, learning what you guys are doing. And I would hope also DEC would have some kind of part of these efforts, because they're the people who are going to inherit all this work much sooner than they expect to, and much sooner than even their parents think, because the years pass very quickly. There's a lot of talk about STEAM education / STEM education. I like to call it STEAM. But if our students starting in middle school, and I would say even 5th grade, they're so capable, for them to start digging in, be able to understand how you gather data. What is the equipment? What does it take to do this type of work? May inform them into a career choice down the line, but also awaken in them civic engagement, that it is the air out there is also their responsibility, but their right to know what is being done. Is there any, has there been any effort? I know you guys just started working on this. This is new, but that's to me what's really is a very exciting part of this kind of work. Yes, what you guys are doing, it's great, but how do we engage the students, the young people, and I say again, middle school, high school?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I wish we had a representative from RAP here from the Red Hook Art Project. The way that they're beginning the community engagement in Red Hook is focusing on exactly that. It's focusing on a cohort of young people, I think mostly around high school age, maybe a little bit older, who are engaging with the data, starting to map out sort of their experiences with a changing Red Hook, and from there engaging with the data that shows can sort of embody some of the changes that they're experiencing. And so I think what will happen from there is that they will help lead some adult cohorts in the neighborhood as well, and in that way we'll become leaders. So hoping that will go a long way.
Yeah, I just one sentence or two. Are they the young people from the organization? Is there any effort to strengthen and to work with them on the science, the knowledge of the math, the level of math that is required to understand this stuff, so that it's not only the civic aspect of it, but the science of it, and what they need, the knowledge, the math, the science, the physics that is needed in order to understand, and not only, and to think outside the box, and to be able to comment and be able to collaborate. Not am I making myself clear? Because that's, to me, is a huge concern. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if I can offer a comment on that, I think it's a really interesting idea to just from the get-go understand that the interdisciplinarity of the interdisciplinary nature of these problems and projects. And I was just thinking of how the possibility of creating projects that engage across civics and biology and science, and perhaps invite opportunities for really, if anyone's familiar with the theory of multiple intelligences, I don't know what it is.
Yes.
In English from Howard Gardner. But I think at least my vision originally, and that's why we were excited to support RAP on creating their own path to how to engage with this, is that there's many opportunities to relate to this, because guys, the only thing that we do more often than breathe is pick up our phones. So we do this every 3 seconds. It affects every part of our lives, and there's really many ways to come to it. And I think that it's important for different communities that engage to find their way and their path to how to talk about this and think creatively and scientifically about these issues.
Right. And the power of cross-pollination. When people that come to a problem with maybe different perspectives, every angle is an important angle. When you sit together and you hear each other and you listen to each other, that cross-pollination, which we often forget about in quality education. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
And we have one more question from the public before we move to close. I think I see Damien's hand up.
Yep, Damien, Andrade, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I just want to know, I believe you mentioned that someone from Red Hook will be leading ways that people could be involved. You mentioned that it might be high schoolers. Do you know if college students could participate in this as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I don't see why not. Go ahead, Manny.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say that the activities that that RAP has been doing are open to the public. And they are particularly focused on youth from our neighborhood, but they are an open invitation for anyone who wants to participate. I believe last one was a couple of weeks ago, and it's my understanding that they'll do more, but perhaps this is more a question for them. We were hoping to present more on the sort of technical aspect and story of it, but we totally understand that, you know, people want to figure out how to engage with this because it's really important and interesting. So are you from Red Hook? Are you interested in attending an activity there?
I'm from Sunset Park, Brooklyn. I'm from like 3rd Avenue, so like stuff like this definitely affects me a lot. And I definitely would like to see, like, you know, the updates or the data that anyone like could provide on like 3rd Avenue or just like in areas that like the last mile facilities have been impacting. Cause like me, I like see trucks coming down my block as well. And I'm like over here, like, wow, like a big like tractor is like coming down my block. So yeah, I know like how that definitely affects. And then I also know that would definitely like to see an air quality because I believe they're also opening up the Brooklyn cruise terminal, and one of the largest like cruise ships is coming to dock in Red Hook, and the dock doesn't have
They
the
forgot
proper
adapter.
yeah, they don't have the proper equipment to hook up the cruise, so the cruise is just going to be burning all of their fuels onto Red Hook and Sunset Park as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's for that. I think we need a vacuum the size of a small apartment more than an air quality monitor. But I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna smell it.
Oh, by the way, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome for your question.
Katie, I believe we've reached the end of the hands.
Sounds good. My connection has gotten very bad. So please, everyone, join the BQE meeting next Tuesday, March 21st at 6:30 at PS24, BQE revisioning sessions. And thank you to our presenters. We'll provide the contact information. You can see it's right there to follow up directly and hopefully see the opportunity to extend this to Sunset Park. Thank you. And Windsor Terrace. Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you, everybody,
everyone.
for joining.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.